everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football. My name is Scott Morgan, around the Motor City Madmouth, and we're back at it. Ryan Skolrud, how you doing?
Doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing great, and joining us tonight is Xavier McKnight from the Real and the Rare. Xavier, what's going on?
Well, it's always great to be on with you guys. Great to be on with Ryan. Always great to be on with you guys. Hope everybody's ready for some great fantasy football conversation tonight, and some other great topics that we're going to be dishing out in our kitchen tonight.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to lead off with fantasy football, Ryan, and we're going to talk about too much in the draft capital. Why don't you clarify that for our listeners?
Well, these are, in terms of draft capital, what I'm meaning is you think about it even in terms of the NFL draft, guys that you maybe like, but you don't necessarily like where they're going. You think, a guy that you maybe want on your team, but you're just not willing to draft him in the late third round. You'd want to see if he maybe falls to the fourth round because there's two guys similar that you want. So these first few players I'm going to be going over are guys that I think are going, for my taste, too early in fantasy drafts right now. Now, what I'm using for this is from fantasypros.com. Their average draft position based on multiple different platforms in half-point PPR. So the first one I'm starting off with is Joe Mixon. Right now, he is being drafted as the 7th running back off the board and the 9th overall player off the board in half-point PPR. Last year in 2019, he was running back 13 overall in half-point PPR, and in 2018, he actually made it up to running back 9. Here's some of my issues with Joe Mixon. I know that he's a talented guy. I was high on him when he came out of college. The things that kind of set me a little off for Joe Mixon is that last year the Bengals were the second worst offensive line according to PFF, and so they've had, I believe, one addition to the offensive line. I believe it's a rookie from last year who missed the entire season, will be back and should be healthy for the season. However, if that's their only addition to the offensive line, that doesn't necessarily help out a ton in terms of pass protection and run blocking. Joe Mixon had a decent season running the ball, ran for 1,100 yards. However, he ran for 1,100 yards only facing 8-man boxes 7.8% of the time. So, again, we're dealing with a not great offensive line in terms of blocking. The defense was expecting to be able to sit back because they knew that their defensive line was going to be able to stop up the run for the most part. So, I think he had 4.1 yards per carry, was middle of the pack in terms of time to line of scrimmage. This is a next-gen stat from NFL.com that determines how quickly, from the time a running back gets the ball until they're through the line of scrimmage. Joe Mixon is right about middle of the pack in terms of all running backs who had at least 50 carries last year. Middle of the pack in terms of efficiency, in terms of how many yards it takes them to get from the time they catch the ball to the line of scrimmage, which means he's kind of and that efficiency determines like how much of a north-south runner someone is, and he's very much middle of the pack in terms of the entire NFL. Just not necessarily a straight up and down runner, not necessarily a side to side runner. He's really kind of in the middle. So again, just a lot of middling stats that don't really sit well with me. He had the 6th most carries, and now coming into this year, he's got a rookie quarterback who's had no OTAs and no camps. They're just now starting up in this next week team practices. And again, a rookie quarterback with a bad offensive line. His 5 games where he had over 90 yards rushing in 2019, 2 of them were against Cleveland, who had the number 30 rush defense. One was against Arizona, who had the number 24 rush defense, and 2 of them were in blowouts against, and the other 2 were in blowouts against Baltimore and New England, where at that point they were just, okay, let's just run it, we're not winning this game anyways. So, and I think in those two games, he had, I want to say, 24 and 26 carries in those two games. So he got a lot of work when it didn't matter. So it could be that the Bengals find themselves in a lot of those kind of situations this year where Joe Mixon can get that kind of work. I'm just not totally convinced that he will be consistent enough to take that early in the draft. If I need to draft a running back in the first round, I want a guy that I know has enough solid pieces around him that he's going to provide consistent production for me and not be a roller coaster ride. So those are kind of my thoughts on Joe Mixon.
What is Xavier?
Well, I agree with that 100%. And number one, for personal reasons, Joe Mixon was on my team last year for fantasy football, and he did absolutely nothing for me. So I will not be drafting Joe Mixon in the first, the second, the third, or any round. I am done with Joe Mixon as a fantasy football player until it is proven that he will actually get some points on the board and he will actually help win games. Well, so I'm with you 100% on that. But as far as the whole entire football context and all of this, you're 100% right on that as well. Joe Burrow, we predict that he's going to have a nice career in the NFL, but we don't know how his rookie season is going to play out, especially with him having no OTAs, a very limited training camp. They had no mini camp. We hear that he and A.J. Green have a nice rapport with each other on the field. Their connection looks very nice, but we don't know how any of this stuff is actually going to look until they actually get on the field and they're playing in an actual game. And when it comes down to the Bengals, I don't know what to make out of Zach Taylor as a coach yet. So I don't really know if he wants to run the ball more or if he wants to pass the ball more, because I can't really judge him based off of last season, because the Bengals were an absolute mess last year. So that's going to play a key role into all of this too. So I agree with you 100% on all of this. Joe Mixon is definitely not a player that I would take in the first round, just speaking from a football standpoint. Well, from a personal standpoint, I'm not taking him in any round.
Well, I guess he's a little upset with Joe Mixon. I hate to tell you this. I also had him too, and he didn't make it through the season. So that makes it a major majority, 3-0. And right now, my fantasy football future is definitely up in the air. You know, I'm ready to probably retire, but not with the show. Okay, I like to stay on the sideline and use my real football expertise, but love the fantasy conversation because it's interesting. But you know, I'm pulling a Brett Favre with my family league. I'm waffling. So I'm not waffling about Joe Mixon like Xavier McKnight. You didn't do me any favors, that's for sure. So 3-0. Majority rules. All right. With that said, Ryan, give me numero 2 on the list.
Number 2 on my list is Odell Beckham. Now, Odell Beckham was an absolute beast when he was in New York. I mean, he was able to do things as a receiver that just you wouldn't expect. Was able to put up massive amounts of yards. That was also in Eli Manning, kind of the end of Eli Manning's prime. And he was really, for the most part, the only target for Eli Manning. Now he goes, after last year, he was with the Browns, ended up finishing in 2019 as wide receiver, I believe it was wide receiver 26. And he finished with over 1,000 yards, but only had 4 touchdowns. Now they've got a new coach. Right now he's being drafted as wide receiver 12 after finishing as wide receiver 26 last year. And it's the number 33rd overall in half-point PPR in terms of coming off the board. He has a new coach in Kevin Stefanski this year, who was the quarterback coach at one point for Minnesota, was promoted last year to being the offensive coordinator. And what did we see in kind of a change of philosophy in Minnesota last year? They went from a pass-heavy offense with Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs to being a run-heavy offense that basically just mainly featured Dalvin Cook. So Kevin Stefanski comes to the Browns, and who do they have as a running back? They've got Nick Chubb and they've got Kareem Hunt. They have stud running backs. So how much do you want to bet that this expectation of Odell Beckham putting up these massive numbers when they also have Jarvis Landry as one of their other wide receivers who may not be ready for the beginning of the season, but that doesn't mean he's not going to cut into production halfway through the season. And then they also signed Austin Hooper as a free agent from Atlanta. So you've got all these weapons that there have never been that many weapons around Odell Beckham when he was in New York with the Giants. So there are enough weapons around now to be able to spread things out. I'm still not completely confident in his ability to keep his cool on the sidelines, and I'm not completely confident in Baker Mayfield. So with that, also he had 5 games over 80 yards last year. 3 of those, one was against the Bengals, one who was the 21st ranked pass defense. The Seahawks were the 27th, and the Miami Dolphins were 26th. There was again a major lack of consistency. He struggled with drops really for the first time in his career last year. And so Odell, again, I don't mind having him on my team. I'm just not going to take him as the 12th wide receiver off the board. I'll take him as like 18 to 20th because I think that's about where he may finish. But I'm not going to take him at 12. I'm not going to take him at number 33 overall.
I'll just say this about Beckham. He goes from a beast in New York to a bust in Cleveland. That's all. And I think you said the thing there, Ryan, that I don't trust Baker Mayfield. I really don't. Maybe Kevin Stefanski is the only way that you save yourself from another bad choice at the signal caller position. But Baker Mayfield, this is a make-or-break season for him. Sure. Go ahead, Xavier.
Well, it looks like it's going to be 3-0 on this one as well. But for me, I want to just point this out. I still do believe in the talent and the athleticism and the ability that Odell Beckham Jr. does have. So the main reason I wouldn't draft him in the first round honestly has more to do with the fact that he's with a stacked roster like Ryan already pointed out. They have Nick Chubb and they have Kareem Hunt in the backfield. And on the perimeter, they have Jarvis Landry. You know he's going to miss the first 2 games. They added Austin Hooper in the offseason. But they also still have David Njoku at tight end. And the only problem with David Njoku is that he has not been able to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, you might have a pair of dynamic tight ends there as well. And they have other receivers who are going to have to get the ball as well. And I'm along with you guys on this one too. I don't trust Baker Mayfield either. He has way too many weapons for that offense to have been as finessed at times as it was a year ago. And I'm just curious to see with the new head coach like Kevin Stefanski, is he going to be able to come in and figure out how to be more of a franchise quarterback? Because this could very well be Baker Mayfield's make or break year with the Cleveland Browns, honestly, depending on how this goes. Because Kevin Stefanski did not draft him, and John Dorsey is no longer there as the general manager either. And we all know how this goes. A new coach and a new GM, they usually want to bring in their own guys, unless they know the guys that they already have there are indeed the real deal. Baker Mayfield has not proven that he is the real deal. And one of those wide receivers to look out for is Jonathan Peoples-Jones. You know him very well, Scott. I know you do. He played at the University of Michigan, and he was a wide receiver there, and he put up good numbers for the Wolverines offense.
Right.
And with what he's going to bring to the Browns offense, I believe he has a chance to do some really big things there. But Odell's not going to get the type of touches that he is accustomed to getting from the point that he was in New York, just simply because he's surrounded by so much more. And Ryan, you pointed it out, he was mainly the only go-to guy in New York until maybe about 2016 and 2017 when Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram came around and they slowly started coming to their own. The injuries have hindered them as well. But the only reason I wouldn't draft him in the first round is simply because I don't believe that he's going to be able to put up first-round numbers for all of the other talent that he's surrounded around. They have to figure out a way to spread the ball around. So he's not going to get catered to in this offense, not this year.
Well, Donovan Peoples-Jones, you talk about him, not only could be of course, as a wideout, but he'll be a special team player as well. So he's definitely a dual threat for sure. Out of the University of Michigan. Glad you brought him up. Go ahead, Ryan.
Real quick before we go, since we're covering more sports than just fantasy football, right. I just got the notification that the Tampa Bay Lightning and Columbus Blue Jackets game is now going into a 4th overtime.
Yep, looking at
the game started 5 hours ago.
I'm looking at that right now. 17:50 left in the overtime number 4. So we have already had the Calgary Flames beating the Dallas Stars 3-2. So we got one game done while the other one's going on. Go figure. NHL hockey, I love it, boy. NHL playoffs. Go ahead. Glad you brought that up.
Here we go. So the next one is Kenyon Drake, who is going as the 12th running back off the board, the 22nd overall pick in half-point PPR. Now, he really experienced a kind of a breakout after the trade from Miami to the Cardinals last year. He started off the first game, I want to say he had 15 carries for like 110 yards and a touchdown against the 49ers, who was one of the top rush defenses last year. Actually, I think they were middle of the pack because their pass defense was, I believe, number one, but their rush defense was middle of the pack, but still put up a ton of yards against a very good 49ers defense. That being said, the Cardinals defense last year was the 9th worst run blocking in 2019, according to Pro Football Focus. And I think what a lot of people are suffering from with Kenyon Drake is recency bias. If you look at his stats from last year, he scored 7 of his 8 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks of the season. Or last 3 weeks of the fantasy season, so week 14, 15, and 16. He really lacked a lot of consistency. Really, he had that first game in week 9 or week 10, and then it was just kind of a few good games, and all of a sudden 14, 15, and 16, he takes off again. Those games, those explosive games were against two of the bottom run defenses in the league in Cleveland and Seattle. You look at what Arizona has also added in DeAndre Hopkins, that's going to open up things more for the pass game. It may open things up more for the running game. They had some decent weapons in the pass game last year as well. Now, obviously they didn't have DeAndre Hopkins, but it's possible that things could open up more for the running game because of the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. That being said, Kenyon Drake also doesn't use much of the pass game, and because of kind of, especially in like a half-point or full-point PPR, the importance of receptions and being used in the pass game for running backs nowadays, I'm not willing to jump at him as the 12th running back, or even the 22nd overall pick. I mean, in a 10-team league that's early third round, I'm still a little uncomfortable. I could maybe late third round, early fourth, but that's the best I could do there. So.
Well, all I'll say about it is DeAndre Hopkins makes it difficult for me to want to take Kenyon Drake because, after all, he is an impact player. And again, I've said all along why the Houston Texans got rid of him, to me, is beyond my wildest of imagination. But DeAndre Hopkins is going to have a big breakout year for the Cardinals. So, yeah, I'm not sold on Kenyon Drake just for that reason. And, of course, what do we got? Murray. Was it Tyler Murray? I think they'll have an excellent second year. Go ahead, Xavier.
I agree that I would not take Kenyon Drake in the first round either, but I will say this. I believe he's one of those guys that will have a chance to be a sleeper player as far as somebody who will be able to have a great impact in the 2020 season. And I'm not doing this based off of recency bias. I'm just doing this based off of we'll have to see where that Arizona Cardinals offensive line is. The only thing that would kind of scare me off about them is the fact that they haven't had mini camps and OTAs and a very limited training camp to really get better as a unit. But with this unit now going into year 2 and them also adding another piece in the draft, I feel like it really could work out for Kenyon Drake in a way that he ends up being more of an impactful player than we think he may be able to be for fantasy teams this season.
Alrighty. So the next one I've got is DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers. He's going as the number 14 wide receiver off the list, 36th overall. And my issues with DJ Moore is he had a solid season last year, over 1,000 yards receiving, but we have a new quarterback this year in Teddy Bridgewater. And I understand that he had to deal with, that last year, Moore had to deal with a combination of Cam Newton and then Kyle Moore and just kind of not very great quarterbacks. However, now having Teddy Bridgewater, last year Teddy Bridgewater played in 7 games, I believe. In those 7 games, Teddy Bridgewater only had an average of 4.6 air yards per completion. So that means he was only throwing the ball. His average completion was only about 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. He had the worst intended air yards. So in terms of attempts, his average attempt was only throwing about 6 yards downfield. Now I understand that's the Saints' offense. A lot of those short passes, especially someone like Michael Thomas. But that's, for me, throwing that in there to go with DJ Moore only averaging 4.8 yards after catch per reception last year, he comes to me as more of a deep ball threat that's not necessarily going to get a whole lot after the catch. Say someone like a Chris Godwin who absolutely blew up last year, and that's kind of what some people are expecting out of DJ Moore this year. However, last year, if you look at Chris Godwin, most of his receptions were on crosses and slant routes. He had some long touchdowns, but they were in yards after the catch. Chris Godwin had, I want to say, was fifth or sixth in the league last year in yards after the catch at 7.6 yards after the catch per reception. DJ Moore is very much middle to low end of the pack in terms of only 4.8 yards after the catch per reception. So he's not a guy that's going to get a lot after the catch. It's just I'm not seeing he kind of needs a little bit more of a deep ball type of atmosphere in order to really put a lot of stats up. And I understand that Joe Judge has become the offensive coordinator now for the Panthers, and he's the one that was really the brain behind the LSU offense last year. But Joe Burrow, I think, is a better quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater, and that makes a difference. So it's also in a college game, in college with LSU, which is not the same and not necessarily going to transfer to the NFL game, at least not to the same level. So for me, DJ Moore is a little bit of a pass, and let's not forget also they added Robbie Anderson, plus they still have Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel. So there's enough around there that I don't think that DJ Moore is worth being the 14th wide receiver off the board and going at the end of the third or the beginning of the fourth round.
Okay.
Scott, would you like me to go ahead and go?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're actually going to disagree on this one. DJ Moore is definitely one of those players I would take my chances on in the first round. Because with the Panthers offense this year, it's almost like playing with house money. There's Christian McCaffrey. You believe Robbie Anderson is going to go to Carolina and possibly do some of the similar things that he was doing with the Jets? I don't trust Curtis Samuel. There's no Greg Olsen there at the tight end slot anymore. Teddy Bridgewater is a quarterback who is actually going to throw the football and not necessarily scramble for it. And that's not me taking a shot at Cam Newton. That's just me pointing out play styles there. And I believe DJ Moore is trying to break out and have a great year this year. And he is one of those wide receivers I would have on my radar at not number one overall, but in the first round that I would take a chance on. Because I believe that he and Christian McCaffrey, who are going to be the keys to that Panthers offense to do some things this year. And Ryan, you said some things there about you believing that Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not exactly sure how you can make that out to be right now at this moment, considering that Teddy Bridgewater has been in the league and he's proven himself a few times over again. The main problem with Teddy Bridgewater is that horrendous knee injury that he suffered a few years ago with the Minnesota Vikings, because he was coming off of a season where he had just led the Vikings back to the playoffs. And the roster that was surrounding him was developing, and it wasn't as good as it is now, per se. So I believe in Teddy Bridgewater. I believe that DJ Moore is going to do great things this year. And I believe Joe Brady is going to take that same offense that he had at LSU, and he's going to build on that in Carolina. It's not going to be as this year because they do still need to get a few more pieces in there. And I don't necessarily trust that Carolina as a whole is going to have a great year just simply because the entire defense is in a rebuild right now. But you never know how this whole thing is going to play out. But as far as DJ Moore goes, I would definitely take my chances on him in the first round.
All right, the only thing I'll say about the Panthers situation is Christian McCaffrey cannot have the continuous workload that he has. One injury to McCaffrey, and you could just say 1-15, 0-16, or 2-14, regardless of who's under center. Christian McCaffrey obviously got rewarded with a payday, so they better find some balance and depth because they can. Wear and tear is one thing on a running back, but the Panthers will go as far as Christian McCaffrey's help to hold up. I'm going to probably take a push on that and put my money on Christian McCaffrey that you need to cut his workload down as much as you can and not wear him out within the next 2 years, or it wouldn't matter who's the quarterback and who the wideouts are. So.
All right. So my last player here. Now this one in the fantasy world is a little more controversial than any of the others I've said so far. So for me, right now, my last guy that I'm not as key to go out and get is Tyler Higbee, the tight end from the LA Rams. And there's a couple reasons for this. Higbee absolutely blew up at the end of the season last year. He was the number one tight end for the last 5 weeks of the season. He had 4 weeks in a row of 100 yards, averaging about 8.5 to 9 catches. And then even in the last week, I believe he had 7 catches for like 85, 90 yards. So absolutely blew up at the end of the season. But what was the difference between that part of the season and the beginning of the season? The difference was Gerald Everett was injured and done for the year. When Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee were on the field last year together, Gerald Everett, through the first 10 weeks of the season, was tight end number 14 in fantasy, and Higbee was tight end number 36. Was barely used. Now, I understand it shows that Higbee is going to be better off this year, and shows that he has developed a bit of chemistry with Jared Goff. That being said, the Rams already stated that they're going to use more 12 personnel, which means that they're going to have more single running back, 2 tight end groupings on the field. They've also drafted a 4th round tight end in Bryson Hopkins. And going back to that stretch that Higbee had in December, those games were he had 2 of them against Arizona, who was the worst team in the league against tight ends, Seattle, who was the 3rd worst team in the league against tight ends, and Dallas, who was the 7th worst team in the league against tight ends. So he was basically free to roam wherever he wanted those last 5 weeks. And against solid defense, I'm not so sure that he could put up those same kind of numbers. So, again, this was a little bit more controversial. I still think that he could finish as right around tight end number 10. But he's going right now as the 7th tight end off the board. And I think that there's still a possibility that Gerald Everett could finish above him if Gerald Everett stays healthy the entire year. So that's kind of my thoughts there on that one.
So Ryan, Scott, I'll actually give you guys some inside information on some things involving Gerald Everett. I am friends with one of Gerald Everett's best friends that he grew up with as a childhood friend. His friend Tony Smith and I, a huge shout out to Tony Smith and the work that he does in the media as well. He grew up with Gerald Everett, and he's already been telling me, he said, my brother, because they look at each other as brothers, they're not identical brothers, not biological brothers, but they look at each other as brothers. They're that close to each other. He said, my brother's really been putting in some work in this offseason, and he's ready to show Tom McVay that he should have unlocked him in the offense many years ago. So Gerald Everett is indeed going to be a player to watch out for in this Rams offense. As far as Tyler Higbee goes, I actually believe that they could form a tandem similar to what Rob Gronkowski and Marcellus Bennett had the potential to be about 4 years ago in New England before Rob Gronkowski went down with another season-ending injury. I believe they have the potential to be that special. I'm not sure what to make out of this rookie tight end they drafted because I'm not sure how he's going to fit in. But you know what? I'm not sure what to make out of the Rams offense as a whole right now. There's no Todd Gurley there. Brandon Cooks is no longer there. We know that Cooper Kupp is going to be a threat in the offense. I really don't know what to make out of Robert Woods, to be honest with you. Just simply because I saw Robert Woods in Buffalo, and I wasn't exactly sold on him then. Now, he's had some nice seasons with the Rams since then, but with a lot of that because Brandon Cooks was over there on the other side of that. And when Brandon Cooks was healthy, he's one of the fastest players in the NFL, bar none. But I believe that Tyler Higbee should not be drafted in the first round just simply because you're going to see a lot of split reps between both he and Gerald Everett in those tight end slots in Los Angeles this year. And who knows what they're going to do with the rookie tight end as well.
I'll take a wait and see approach on this one. Too many weapons run during the offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, so let's get to my bargains. So here, my first bargain, we've already mentioned Devin Singletary. And right now he's going as the 22nd running back in the draft. He is the 47th pick, so he's going in the 5th round right now. Last year he finished as the 31st running back in a half-point PPR. Now, part of that was because I want to say he got injured at the end of week 2, missed weeks 3, 4, and 5, and then came back in week 7. And even week 7, he was really kind of held back a little bit. Only got, I believe, 2 or 3 touches week 7. And then in week 8, finally was able to really let go. And through weeks, or second half of the season, weeks 9 through 16 of last year, he was running back number 17. That was with Frank Gore taking a lot of the goal line touches and that sort of thing. Devin Singletary only had, I want to say, 2 goal line touches all last year. I want to say Josh Allen had 4 and Frank Gore had 11. So that's kind of how the breakdown went. Now they drafted Zach Moss, so it's likely that Zach Moss is still going to take a lot of that short yardage stuff, while Devin Singletary is kind of more the 20 to 20s kind of a guy. That being said, he averaged over 5 yards per carry last year. Does a really good job of stretching the field. Is used well catching the ball out of the backfield. The one concern is that he does have, being a little bit of a smaller guy, he does have to deal with some injuries. So I think he's a bargain for me, drafting him as the 22nd running back, halfway through the 5th round. I like him there. I'm not necessarily going to take him earlier than that. But if he falls to me in the 5th round or even kind of late 5th, early 6th, I'm more than happy to take Devin Singletary with the possibilities of what he can do in that offense.
I'll tell you what, toward the latter part of last year, I did pick up Devin Singletary. And you know what? Florida Atlantic University football has produced some pretty good running backs. One of them that you guys are all too familiar with was Alfred Morris. So Alfred Morris had a pretty good career. I think Devin Singletary, the future looks really bright for him. So you're right. He could be a bargain. He could be a sleeper. Call it what you want. But with Alfred Morris and now Devin Singletary being running back out of Florida Atlantic University, I wouldn't sleep on this kid. I think he could be a good value pick for sure.
I really like Devin Singletary. He's one of the biggest reasons I have the Buffalo Bills as ranked as the best team in the AFC East this year, bar none. I think Miami is actually the second best team in that division to them right now just because of everything that's going on in New England, and I just don't trust the Jets. But to me, we could be looking at a miniature big three here with Josh Allen, and new wide receiver Stephon Diggs. I'm really excited to see what they're going to bring to that offense, and I really believe that Devin Singletary did have a breakout season this year, and I would actually take my chances on him as early in the 3rd or the 4th round.
Okay. My next guy is you can call me a homer on this one. My next guy is Tyler Lockett. He's being taken as wide receiver number 20, overall number 50. So end of the 5th round, beginning of the 6th round in half-point PPR leagues. And one of the things that I know that me and other owners of Tyler Lockett got a little frustrated with last year is he went through a little bit of a stretch where he wasn't getting any targets. Only 1 catch, 1 target. And for the most part, a lot of that happened when he got injured in the Monday Night Football game against the 49ers about week 10 or 11. After that, he was actually kind of in and out of the lineup for like 3 weeks, which is when a lot of that, one catch for 12 yards, 0 targets, 0 catches, 1 catch for 13 yards all happened. And so a lot of that was based off his injuries. He had 5 games with less than 5 fantasy points last year. And again, there was a 3 or 4 game stretch where he was kind of dealing with an injury where that happened. In many drafts, he's actually going behind DK Metcalf. Now, DK Metcalf is actually going as the wide receiver 22 overall, according to ADP and half-point PPR leagues. But there are many drafts and a lot of people in the fantasy football universe, who are taking DK Metcalf over Tyler Lockett, expecting big year. I am expecting big year out of DK Metcalf too. At the same time, because of people overreaching for DK Metcalf, it's leaving Tyler Lockett open to be taken. Lockett last year, after having a career high of 59 catches and 936 yards 2 years ago, finished with 82 receptions and just over 1,000 yards. He has the 4th highest catch percentage last year for all wide receivers and tight ends who had at least 100 targets. There's always the constant talk about unleashing Russell Wilson, allowing him to pass more, allowing him to work more in the pass game. Is that actually going to happen? And for me, if you can get a wide receiver that is going to get you close to 1,000 yards, does some special team work. Now, I know special teams has really been knocked down in recent years because of the kickoff rules and all that kind of stuff. That being said, because he does his special teams work, and he can get, and he's proven to be a 1,000-yard receiver, and just the overall talent that he's got, he's going to be used a lot in that offense. So I love taking him as a wide receiver 20 with a chance and possibility that he could end up being a top 15 wide receiver. I mean, even if you look at where he finished last year in terms of his points, all he had, if he had, was I want to say 2 more touchdowns, which would have given him, 8 or 10 on the season. 2 more touchdowns, just 12 points would have put him at wide receiver number 14. So just that much, there's only that much of a difference between where he finished last year as wide receiver 20 and where he could have finished as wide receiver 15. So I really like Tyler Lockett. I think that he's being overlooked because of the hype around DK Metcalf.
Well, there's a lot of hype around DK Metcalf, and it's rightfully deserved. And I like Tyler Lockett too, but I don't like him nearly as much this season in their offense as you might like him, because I believe that Seattle is going to spend a huge portion of this season making DK Metcalf the go-to number 1 receiver going forward, with Russell Wilson as the quarterback for the foreseeable future. That's just why I see the offense going there. You also have to keep into account that they added Greg Olsen in the offseason, and that is also going to play a role too. I'm not sure how much he has left in the tank. We'll have to see. But I believe that he's going to have to get some touches as well. And with Chris Carson and Rashard Penny coming back, Seattle does like to run the football at times as well. They don't run it nearly as much as they did a few years ago when they had Marshawn Lynch as beast mode. Now, Marshawn Lynch coming back last season as a more washed-up version of himself, even though the guy still could carry some short yardage runs for them when it was needed. But there are a lot of dynamic factors with the Seattle offense. And I believe that Tyler Lockett is going to be a great number 2 receiver for them, but his numbers are not going to be great enough for me to consider possibly drafting him within the first 5, 6, maybe even 7 rounds.
All I'll say is you both make great points. That's it.
My thing, just kind of as a rebuttal to that, with Greg Olsen, Greg Olsen has become part of the team. He joins a group of, I want to say, 6 tight ends now, because we're still working on cutting them down. I'm not so sure how much Olsen has in the tank either. To be honest, I'm almost counting on him getting injured. And I hate saying that. But I'm almost counting on him not making it through the season. Partially because that just seems to be the history of Seattle tight ends over the last 6 years. Whether it's Jimmy Graham or Will Dissly 2 years in a row. And And so I'm a little hesitant on how much Olsen's going to be part of the offense. Now, you mentioned the running game. I absolutely do agree with you that there's going to be a lot of emphasis on the run game, which really is what opens up the game, the passing game for Tyler Lockett and for DK Metcalf. The issue is that Chris Carson is coming off a season-ending hip fracture, and Rashad Penny, we don't even know if he'll even come back at all this year because of the torn ACL at the end of last year. They drafted DJ Dallas out of Miami. They have Travis Homer, who's more of a pass-catching style running back anyways. And they just signed Carlos Hyde. So they still do have a lot of running options. I'm just if their top two options are not necessarily locks to be ready to go this year. So for that reason, that's why I'm a little more bullish on Tyler Lockett than maybe some others. Again, I understand all the hype around DK, and I absolutely do believe that he very well may pass Tyler Lockett as the number one wide receiver. For me, it's just more the value. I still think that he can put up 1,000 yards and 75 catches in this offense.
Well, the only thing I'll say about Greg Olsen, if indeed he does get hurt, he has a career waiting for him in broadcasting. So I thought he had a pretty good audition with the XFL, and who knows if the XFL could be coming back, and you never know, there could be an NFL gig waiting for Greg Olsen. But you're right, he surely hasn't been healthy the last few years, so I have my doubts about Greg's ability.
Moving on, here's one that you actually mentioned a little bit earlier, Xavier, is Robert Woods. This is why I like Robert Woods. Now, you mentioned a lot of the question marks about the Rams offense. I agree with you. There's especially question marks about the offensive line and what they're going to do with the run game. I mean, I know they drafted Cam Akers in the second round with their first pick. They've got Darrell Henderson, who they drafted in the third round the year before. They've got Malcolm Brown. So they have options running, but the offensive line did struggle. That being said, Robert Woods last year finished as the wide receiver 20. He ended up missing one game last year, and had he just scored his average points per game, would have finished as the number 15 wide receiver. He's going right now as the 24th wide receiver off the board in 10 team leagues. He's going number 59 overall, so at the end of the 6th round. Finished last year with career high interceptions of 90, 1,134 yards, but only had 2 TDs. That was really the down point from where he had been the last couple of years with the Rams. In terms of some of the extra things with Robert Woods, last year he was top 15 in terms of wide receivers and tight ends in yards after catch per reception, top 15 in separation, in which how many yards are between him and the defender when he catches the ball, and is number 2 in terms of cushion. And so that's when lined up on the defense or when lined up on offense on the line of scrimmage, how much cushion the defenders give him. So they're still guys who respect Robert Woods' speed, and because of that, it allows him to work underneath a little bit more, as well as get yards after the catch. So I still think that he's going to be an essential part of this offense. The last 2 years, especially when something happened to Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods becomes the de facto number 1 receiver in this offense. And I think that he still has enough in the tank. And I agree, Xavier, with what you were saying about Buffalo. He did not show a whole lot in Buffalo, but again, he didn't necessarily have the best quarterbacks in Buffalo either, dealing with Tyrod Taylor and a lot of that, in those years. So I think that there's enough. I see enough in Jared Goff that I still think Robert Woods is a value as the number 24 wide receiver coming off the board. I'm not saying that I would push to draft him higher, but if he's there at the end of the 6th, beginning of the 7th round, I'm not afraid to take him.
Well, I'll just say this. I had Robert Woods last year, and I thought he was a pretty productive player. So if I have an opportunity to get Robert Woods, I would have no problem taking him. I think because they traded Brandon Cooks, and you wonder what their weaponry will be like. I think he's a pretty good, solid pick. I really do. But again, now we're talking about the quarterback. Will Jared Goff continue to improve, or will he not improve? That's the biggest thing. You're only as good as the guy that you have throwing the football. But the more weapons you have around you, again, this is a chance. Again, you talked about Cooper Kupp's injury. Opportunity tends to breed opportunity for somebody else. So I'm fine with Woods. Go ahead, Xavier.
Well, I can understand why you guys want to take Woods too, because I feel he's going to be a productive player. I think they try to involve the tight ends a lot more in the offense this year, because no question about it. Unless the Rams have someone in that offense right now that we haven't heard of, that we don't know about, or we don't expect to see good things from yet, this is going to be a pass-heavy offense this year. I don't exactly see where there's going to be much of a rushing attack this year. I'm pretty sure they're going to find a way to try to create that, but for the most part, I'm expecting that ball to be in the air more than I expected to be on the ground with Los Angeles this year. I just believe that this will now be the season where the tight ends truly start to break out a little more than the receivers do. Just because I believe that Jared Goff is really going to be spreading the ball down to them a lot more, especially coming across the slant and maybe even at times in the deep post. Because Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee, they are two of those tight ends that do have respectable speed for tight ends that you may have to double team them at times. We saw a sample of this a few seasons ago when the Rams hosted the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football, and we got to see what Gerald Everett was able to do at times for that secondary as well as Tyler Higbee. So I believe they're going to try to go back to that style of offense too. So I can see where you guys believe that Robert Woods is going to be a productive player for their offense. Because listen, I'm not saying that he's going to completely fall off of a cliff or something. I know he's still a great player. I know he's still a very good player. But I just believe that the Rams offense will be a lot more tight end heavy this year in their passing attack.
Well, sure, you said it yourself. Todd Gurley's not on the team. He goes to Atlanta. Everybody depending on him to be your workhorse carrying the rock. There's no question they're going to be relying on throwing the football. I just think that Robert Woods is going to be playing a larger role. And again, you need productive tight ends in order to protect the quarterback and have a capable short target when under duress. What do you want to add to that, Ryan?
No, I agree. I think that, again, it's not necessarily saying that he's going to go off. For me, it's more where he's being placed or where he's being drafted right now. I think a lot of people he's been falling a little bit in drafts because everyone's expecting it to be more tight end heavy. And I think he's falling farther. To me, I see him falling farther than I think his production will end up. So again, for me, it's more of with where he is going, I'm very comfortable taking him. Not necessarily any higher, but where he is going, I'm comfortable taking him. So that's kind of my thing there. So the one last player that I've got in terms of I think is just a great value that I honestly cannot believe that he's going this low. Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is being drafted as the number 17 quarterback off the board. So in 10 and 12 team leagues, Ryan Tannehill isn't even being drafted. Last year, in 2019, he finished as the quarterback 21. However, we have to remember that he did not see any game action until week 7. And that was when he came in the third quarter to replace the hapless Marcus Mariota. Once he took over from week 8 until week 17, Ryan Tannehill was the number 2 quarterback in fantasy football because of his efficiency. What made Tannehill so good last year was the fact that they had a running game. Now, people were saying that, there's no way Tannehill's going to keep this up. There's no way Tannehill's going to keep this up. Tannehill isn't very good. Let's look at where Tannehill came from. Tannehill, for years, was playing with the Miami Dolphins, who were never really putting much around him to be able to put up the kind of numbers that they thought he was capable of. He never had a great wide receiver core, and really the main issue was he, for the most part, aside from 1 year out of Jay Ajayi, never really had a running game to be able to pull the pressure off of the passing game. Now he's in Tennessee, has Derrick Henry, the league-leading rusher last year, pulling everyone into the box to try to stop the freight train coming through. And because of that, Ryan Tannehill is able to run the offense much like a Russell Wilson in Seattle, where the whole passing game is based off of play action because of the run game, because of how superior the run game is. And so because of that, Ryan Tannehill only had one game last season with less than 2 touchdown passes. The offensive line was already good, and this year there's a chance that they could be even better. They actually, last year, Ryan Tannehill had the 5th most amount of time for quarterbacks to pass. So his the offensive line's ability to give him the time to get the ball out to the receivers, again, because it was based off of a play action, it allowed the receivers to be able to get loose. He has 4 of 5 returning starting offensive linemen. I don't see why Tannehill is being drafted so late. Now, again, if he falls, I love someone taking him, say, the number 8 to 10 quarterbacks off the board, because of how he's in. I'm not expecting people to just go crazy and draft him, number 4, number 5. Obviously, there's likely to be some regression this year. That being said, he shouldn't be going undrafted in 12-team leagues.
I actually had Ryan Tannehill for the playoffs last year, so he didn't hurt me. The only thing I'll say about Tannehill, though, in the past has been his injury problems in Miami. So for me, to believe in Ryan Tannehill, I have to see him on the field for all 16 games, not a short sample size. Durability has been Ryan Tannehill's problem, albeit now in Tennessee. Okay, he has a good running attack around him. That should help him stay on the field. But until the man stays healthy, you're right. He is a bargain. Okay, he's not a guy that I would draft early, but you don't know. He might be good for a win or two. You never know. But I have to see it from a durability standpoint before I'm totally sold on him. Xavier?
Well, when it comes to me with Ryan Tannehill, it's a lot of what you said, Scott. I have to see him on the field for 16 games, or at least a better part of 16 games. Injuries have been a huge part as to why people feel the way that they do feel about Ryan Tannehill. That's no fault of his own. Injuries can happen to any player in the game. And I try not to hold Miami against him as much as other people do, because I understand that the Miami Dolphins that Ryan Tannehill was playing with were not being ran by Chris Greer and being coached by Brian Flores. That has to be taken into account, too. I just want to see him come out and put something else together for another second straight year. And if he's healthy, I do believe that he can do that, because everyone forgets that Ryan Tannehill did lead the Miami Dolphins to one playoff appearance in 2016. Unfortunately, he got injured at the end of that season, and he couldn't even play in that game. Matt Moore had to play quarterback. And, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers went in there and they took care of the business with the Miami Dolphins in that game. But I just have to see him put something else together this year for me to seriously buy into him. And more importantly than anything, I need him to stay on the field. It's like, honestly, he's really another story similar to Sam Bradford. When Sam Bradford was healthy, Sam Bradford was actually a respectable quarterback in the NFL. His main problem was the injuries that took place. And I believe that's also the problem with Ryan Tannehill. Do I believe he's an elite quarterback? No. But I do believe that he is a good enough quarterback to be a game manager that can win you games and make smart decisions when it counts the most.
Okay. All right. Anyone want to add a line before we go on to rapid fire and talk about some other sports? You ready?
So you're breaking up a little bit there, Scott.
You ready for rapid fire?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Big Ten moving football to the spring. Are we really going to see Big Ten football in the spring, or is that a smoke screen?
It's a smoke screen. I don't think we're going to see football at all. Pac-12 also announced that they are moving football to the spring. And if we do have football, you're going to see a lot of players, especially guys who have a shot at being in the NFL, are not going to play. Because you look at what rookies already have to deal with when they're finishing off the season in the NCAA and going into the NFL. You finish the last game of the season, a lot of those guys are going into bowl games. Then you've got the Senior Bowls. Then after that, you've got workouts and interviews for the NFL draft. You've got the Combine. Then you have the NFL draft. After that, a couple weeks later is rookie camps, then OTAs, then mini camps, then training camp, and then the season. There's not much for breaking there. Now, the NFL is not going to restructure because the NCAA moved some football games to the spring for the pandemic. So because of that, you're going to see a lot of players opting out who think they have a shot at getting into the NFL, because if they're playing in the spring, that means they're playing during the NFL draft, or likely, right up to the NFL draft. Which right after that is you got mini camps and OTs. They're basically going to be a rookie who could place high if he plays in the NCAA and in the NFL. Is basically playing 2 seasons in a matter of 10 months. Right. So I don't see, if football happens, I see a lot of guys opting out and leaving and just skipping the season. So I don't think that football will move to the spring.
All I'll say is the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are like two brothers. Okay, what one does, the other one does. And the brothers obviously get to meet in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. That's how it's always been. So I knew that when the Big Ten decided to go ahead and make their move, the Pac-12 was going to follow suit. Xavier McKnight, some thoughts about the Big Ten and the Pac-12?
Well, I'm not surprised that this didn't happen, because the Big Ten and the Pac-12, they, from an athletic standpoint, there's some good programs that they're able to put together there, with programs like Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, and in the Pac-12 you have schools like Oregon and those teams as well. But these are more academically driven schools, so they were going to be paying a lot more attention to this virus as opposed to how fast can we get our players back out there on the field. Let's just go ahead and get that point out of the way. It should be noted that the Big 12 came out and they have said that they do plan to play football in 2020 and that their schedule will be released in the near future. And the Pac-12 players group, they're not happy. They say that the Pac-12 was woefully unprepared. They feel that they were not taken seriously, and they want to keep this year's eligibility. So to answer Ryan's question, or to answer your question, Scott, no, I don't believe that there is going to be football in the spring, and this really compromises the upcoming NFL draft, because now you only have to work with film that you saw on tape from 2 years ago, as opposed to players coming off of a season of football. It really compromises the draft, and it really hurts a lot of guys who need to get some new film on tape to get these scouts and to get these executives to say, you know what, we'll take a chance on him and bring him into our NFL organization. It's really an unfortunate situation right now, but we understand why things are the way that they are, considering what we're all going through right now.
Well, let me throw this at both of you also. How about Nebraska coming out? Their head coach, Scott Frost, said they want to play anyways, even if they have to do it outside of Big Ten. So you wonder where Nebraska would play. Would there be a one-season thing where they'd end up going into the Big 12? I mean, they have a history there. I'm really intrigued about the Nebraska part of the whole thing. Either you want to go ahead and give me a take on that? Nebraska.
Well, I think Nebraska, again, they have a relationship with the Big 12, having moved out of there.
Right.
I think it's possible they could go back for a one-season thing. I think the biggest thing for me is if you look at with not playing a lot of these colleges not playing, and so it's going to seriously affect the draft. How much different does that make you feel about the Seahawks trading 2 first-round draft picks for Jamal Adams, especially with how questionable the draft is going to be over the next couple of years with how the pandemic has affected things?
Good point.
Well, right now it doesn't look like the Jets are going to get much out of those picks at the moment, and we could also be wrong about that. But this is very unfortunate timing because under normal circumstances, that's a great trade, and the Jets win that trade in my eyes as long as they don't do anything stupid with the draft pick. But as of now, Seattle is definitely the winner of this trade.
Okay, let's say the college football, ACC and the SEC still plan to continue playing football now. But that's now. It's a very fluid situation. What's your take on that?
I think it's possible they still play. Again, I think that also at the same time, it could come down to them. They could end up not playing. It's really this is really such a fluid situation, to be completely honest. It's going to go back and forth. People are going to say, yeah, we're going to play. They're going to have contingencies in place just in case, and then at the same time, they may end up not playing. It's really back and forth. I think that the SEC and the ACC they're going to give it a shot. Whether or not it gets shut down this season, that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, here's the one thing I'll say for the both of you guys. They're going to fight to the bitter end, and they're going to give it a shot, and they're going to do their best not to get shut down because, number one, this is the South. And the South is mainly ran by 3 F's: family, faith, and football. They're going to push. They are going to push their hardest to go out there and play. Trust and believe that. Scott, I'm not sure if it came across your radar today, but Governor Ron DeSantis actually held a press conference today at Florida State University to speak more about the future of collegiate athletics in Florida as far as the fall of 2020 goes. And he actually had head coach Mike Norvell out there, and he also had 2 Florida State players out there. And of course, the narrative is we're pushing to play. We feel that it's safer for us to be here in our training facilities and to be out there on the field as opposed to being out and just being regular college students right now at the moment, because the reality of kids between the ages of 18 to say 23 to 24 actually being something and actually sitting still in the midst of a pandemic, it's not a very good chance that's going to happen. As the summer in the state of Florida comes, if people want to go out and have a good time, they're going to go out and have a good time, and they don't really necessarily care who it's going to be at the expense of, until, of course, something happens to them or one of their loved ones. But they are pushing their hardest to get this season done, and we're at least going to see 2 to 3 weeks of college football in the SEC and the ACC. I feel very close to saying that I want to guarantee that, just simply because I know how it is. It is faith, it is family, and it is football. And they live for the month of September all the way through January.
Well, I mean, all I'll say is Governor Ron DeSantis has been consistent. He opened up the state probably a little earlier than he should have, and obviously we know what that there's a lot of COVID-19 in the state of Florida. So why would he not? He's saying consistent. Whether we like the consistency or not, Xavier is another story. You follow me? But he had been consistent for that much. So I don't know, Ryan. You're up in the Pacific Northwest, and Xavier and I are down here in the Southeast. What do you think about the insanity that exists in Florida? And do you really think the ACC and the SEC can pull it off?
I think they'll at least try it. I honestly, and I'm very much, I have family in the South. I understand the mentality. So I very much see them giving it a full go. I just, for me, it's I don't know if it'll actually last. I'm not doubting that they're not going to try. It's just for me, it's more of a question of is it gonna last? Are things gonna get worse with the virus or not? So for me, I believe they're gonna try. We'll see how long it lasts. That's more my opinion.
All right, let's continue.
The last thing I want to say about this COVID deaths were confirmed today. And whether those deaths happen overnight or no matter how much overtime they happen, it's still not very encouraging numbers. But as Scott has already said, the governor and the governor's administration here, they are very consistent with where they want to go with this thing, as well as many other governors in the southern region of our country too. So we'll just have to see.
All right, we'll stay on the football before we go on to other sports. NFL will broadcast games on Saturdays, Fridays, or at odd times or any other day. And I think they will, depending on what happens with the college season, because I know they'll have the flex scheduling at some point. So, what are your thoughts on it? Adam Schefter's talking about that all day.
I see this possible. I'm not surprised that they would try to do that, especially if there's no college football. I don't mind it. For me, it helps me get to see more games instead of having everything all stacked up on top of each other. So I don't mind it.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the NFL Sunday ticket at that point. They can get them on free TV for 1 year with no fans in it anyhow. But go ahead, Xavier. What's your take on this?
Well, I believe it's a great idea, too, especially if there is not going to be any college football and it's getting more thin as the days go by. And as Ryan said, it gives us a chance to see more of the games as opposed to having to wait for Sunday. And even if you have NFL Fan Zone or you have a League Pass or whatever, you still can only really watch 1 to 2 games at a time, and there's usually 6 to 8 games being played in the same exact time period early throughout the day, and another 3 to 4, sometimes 5 games being played in that 4 o'clock, 4:30 time slot too. And if this gives the NFL an opportunity to space those games out and to have them be played on more networks where we get to see more football, as they say, the more the merrier.
Okay, 2 more football things, then we'll go on to other sports. No fans at Lambeau Field for the first 2 games. Third game in November, 20-25% capacity. I know that Lambeau has this big sell-off season and everything's going to go out the window anyhow. But what are your thoughts about Lambeau Field, the shrine of all the sports, in my opinion? Xavier, you lead off with this one.
Well, as I said last week on the Sports Exchange when we addressed this topic, and I stand where I stood then, yeah, I believe that this is the best plan that they can put together going forward. You don't know what's going to happen with the virus, and you don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. You don't know how things are going to look come around November and December. So there's no need in completely coming out and saying we're not going to have fans at all this season. It's really a wait-and-see approach. And I feel that this was the smartest approach for them to take for the first 2 home games, not allowing fans. And then to come out and say, and after that, we'll wait and we'll see and we'll take a look at the numbers, we'll take a look at how things look, and we'll decide to go from there. I actually think this is a great idea by the Packers organization. And surprisingly, we have not heard other teams come out and announce that they were going to follow suit with this yet, which is something I thought we were actually going to hear by now. But, we still have some days to go by where teams are still making their decisions on how they're going to handle this whole thing as well, as far as having fans in the building or not. So I believe that there will be some teams that come up that try to implement this strategy as well, but good on the Packers' part, just in my opinion.
Right, Ryan, I commented on it before. I think it's a great idea with their approach. What's your take, Ryan?
I'm on board with you guys. I think it's a great approach to go with. So I think it gives the fans a chance to be optimistic about the possibility of some fans being there, while also trying to be safe and having a very measured, neutral stance on how they're going about it. So,
the last football topic of the night, and then we go on to a couple of other sports. I know Xavier McKnight was adamant about talking about Deion Sanders' tweet. We'll add a little wrinkle to that Deion Sanders no longer with the NFL Network. So Xavier McKnight, go over the gist of that tweet by Deion Sanders.
Yeah, Friday night, it was the tweet heard around the world. I got on Twitter, and I was on my professional Twitter account at the time, and all I saw was Deion trending. And I didn't know why Deion was trending, and I thought, okay, is it Deion Sanders? Is it Deion Jones? Could it possibly be Deion Waiters? And somebody just spelled it incorrectly, but it indeed was Deion Sanders. And the reason he was tweeting is not necessarily one of those those reasons that you want to be trending necessarily as high as he was. His initial tweet said that all players opting out in all sports, please believe the game will go on without the business, and don't you ever forget that. There's no one that's bigger than the game itself. Only the refs, umps, and officials are that important that you can't play without them. Not you. Hashtag truth. He followed that up a few hours later by saying, in another tweet, I'm much more concerned with everyday men and women doing what they have to do to make ends meet. Most people have no option of choosing to go to work or stay in the comfort and safety of their environment. Have you forgotten your parents and family members can't opt out? Hashtag truth. And here's what I'll say as far as that goes. Is he correct with what he said? Yes. The sports leagues are a business. Yes, they will go on. Yes, they will find replacement players. We've seen this before in many other leagues. But that's not the point here that has everybody in a stir-up about this entire thing. It's the fact that nobody was thinking about this. Nobody, when you watch the different sports networks have this conversation about the players that are opting out in different leagues, in particular the NFL in this case, they're not sitting there thinking, well, I hope these guys don't think that because they're opting out that doesn't mean that that's really going to hurt the team very much because this is a business and it will go on and somebody will step up to the plate. No. What we have done the entire time for those guys who have been opting out is we have applauded them for taking the approach of putting their families and their well-being first as opposed to their own wants and desires that they have for their own hearts and their careers. This was absolutely bad timing by Deion Sanders, but what else is new by a guy who, for most of his career, has been a prima donna, diva, cornerback, and I'm not taking anything away from his ability. I'm not taking anything away from anything he accomplished, but, hey, let's be honest, he doesn't have the best attitude at times. He didn't have the best attitude as a player. At times, he hasn't had the best attitude as an analyst. He's very energetic, and he's very charismatic. But when you say things that are a little off the wall like this, yeah, you're going to have people questioning some things about your character. And that's exactly what Deion Sanders was met with on Friday on Twitter by many people who were disturbed by some of the things he had to say. And he woke up the next morning and he got that on Twitter. He said, good morning. God bless. Live, and live a peaceful, productive, prayerful life. Please, God, and let man be man. Keep your eyes focused on the main thing and allow the other things to concern themselves. Hashtag think about that. Hashtag truth. And he also had one more tweet that he had to say throughout all of this, too. Once, I guess it came to his attention that people were really upset about what he had to say with this. And it should be noted that I don't know if these tweets have possibly been taken down since then, but I have them right here. He tweeted on Saturday evening, when did we as a people become so sensitive, soft, skeptical, and sad? Let's go, baby. We have so much work today to achieve the things we desire. Come on, people. Hashtag truth. Scott, your thoughts. I know you have a lot of nice things you like to say about Mr. Primetime.
Well, Mr. McKnight, you know me all too well. No, I have no nice things. I've always said the one Sanders that I really revel and love is Barry Sanders. Okay, I'm glad the Lions did draft Barry Sanders over Deion Sanders. Yes, prima donna, pompous, whatever you want to call it. I can't stomach Deion Sanders. Of all the athletes that I've seen throughout my lifetime, he would probably be the one athlete that I would rank near the bottom of my list in terms of admiration and respect. Dan Marino's in that category, but Deion Sanders is way ahead of him. So, you know what? Good riddance, Deion Sanders, and I hope I never hear or see you again, although I have a feeling I probably might run into him. I think his son plays for Florida Atlantic University, but regardless, I have no desire to ever meet the guy. I can't stomach the guy. And you know what? To me, Deion Sanders, is who he is. He's a pompous prima donna, and I can't stomach the guy. I just don't. Never cared for Dan Marino, but Deion Sanders, to me, I can't stomach him more than any athlete I've ever dealt with over the years. So, what can I say? Good riddance, Deion. Okay, move on.
And Ryan, before you speak on this topic, I'd actually like to bring everybody's attention that Ryan shared some news with us regarding Deion Sanders before we began this broadcast this evening. He brought to our attention that Deion Sanders is no longer with the NFL Network. Right. He reportedly left the network over a contract dispute, and there are reports out there saying that he would like to focus more on coaching at this time. I don't doubt that. I'm not sure what really went into this, so I'm not even going to try to speculate on that. But Ryan, would you like to go ahead and give us your thoughts on what Mr. Primetime had to say?
Again, I'm in the boat where I agree with Deion, but that doesn't necessarily mean he needed to say it. And who knows? He may have been hearing the conversations from other people around him that prompted that tweet. But again, that doesn't mean he needed to say it. The overall majority of people weren't thinking along those lines. So I'm with you, Xavier, that he didn't need to say it. That wasn't necessarily the thought on most people's minds, but it may have been on some of the people that were around him, and he felt the need to share it with the world instead of just the people that he was talking to. So him moving on from the NFL Network, that came out like about a half hour, 45 minutes before we got started with the show. So it definitely very interesting. There have been a lot of people that have commented on the fact that he was looking to get into getting into coaching anyways. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, definitely very interesting.
All right, let's go on to baseball before we went on the air. Okay, tonight's the first ever MLB game in 105 years in Buffalo. The Miami Marlins versus the Toronto Blue Jays. I could call them the Miami Marlins versus the Buffalo Blue Jays. Brian Anderson hit a home run, gave the Miami Marlins a lead. That was the third of the year. But unfortunately for the Marlins, they trailed that game 4-1 in the top of the ninth inning. This is the first American League or national game there since 1900. So you talk about the fact that the Toronto Blue Jays were homeless because of COVID-19. Buffalo, I think, was a suitable place for them to go. But what are your thoughts about the Marlins and the Blue Jays playing in Buffalo? I know that the Buffalo Bisons make out of it because there were some improvements made to that stadium, that they'll benefit by. But MLB in Buffalo. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I'm glad that the Blue Jays were able to find a place to play. It may not be exactly what they wanted, but the fact that they actually were able to find a place for them to play so that they could keep the season going with all 30 teams, I'm happy to see that. I know that there was some speculation that if they didn't find a home stadium, that they would have to play all their games on the road, and so all the games that were scheduled to be home games for them would be played at the away stadium. This is actually something that I've dealt with before. In the early 90s, the Seattle Mariners had some tiles fall from the top of the Kingdome, and in order to get them replaced, they basically had to say the Mariners cannot finish the season in the Kingdome, and so all of their home games from then on were played in the visiting, what was supposed to be the visiting team's home stadium. So they ended up playing away for the last 20 games of the season. I'm still familiar with the concept of that happening. But I'm glad that they were actually able to find a place to play, where it wasn't necessarily going to be someone else's home stadium. So the fact, again, and like you were saying, the Buffalo Bisons will definitely getting the good end of the deal on this one, getting some improvements to that stadium so that the Blue Jays can play there.
Well, Brian Anderson's name will be part of a trivia question knowing that he hit the first home run in Buffalo in over 100 years. So Brian Anderson, I can only imagine what kind of trivia question he'll be a part of down the road. Xavier, you want to chime in on this one?
Well, I believe that this is great for baseball. I'm glad the Toronto Blue Jays were able to find a home, but let's go a little step further than just the Blue Jays finding a home here. Has Buffalo not ever crept into your mind as one of those cities that you just feel like maybe they should have an MLB team? They just feel like they would be a great fan base for an MLB team. So honestly, I hope that this is actually the start of a team being pushed into Buffalo. Because I just believe that would be an excitement factor for the game that it might slightly be missing in some of these smaller scale, blue collar like cities. And I feel that Buffalo would be one of those great cities for a team to consider relocating to.
Well, bear in mind they're only 100 miles away, so that's a logical choice. And I got to tell you guys something. Ready for this? Back in 1987, when I got the job for the Gastonia Rangers, I was in the top 3 to be the director of public relations for the Buffalo Bisons. Didn't get the job, but I was considered in the top 3, and I was looking forward to it. So it would have been a nice step for me to go from the Tampa Tribune to the Buffalo Bisons and pursue a career in baseball. So, I have a little sentimentality toward the Buffalo Bisons for sure. So, but I'm glad to see them get to Major League Baseball for 26 games. And you know what? A few upgrades. I believe it's called Salem Field, is where they're playing. I think the stadium's only been up for 30 years, but more power to them that they got that worked out because they were being shut out somewhere else. So go to one other baseball note, and then we'll go on to, we'll have a little hockey lesson by Ryan Skolrud. So Charlie Blackmon hitting .484 for the Rockies. Could he hit .400 on the season? Well, you brought it up, Ryan. He's certainly in the right place in Colorado, isn't he, with the altitude? Well, what's your take on it? And his 400, to me, I view that as a major asterisk waiting to happen if Blackmon pulls it off. But go ahead, Ryan. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, this is definitely another one of those, asterisks in terms of 400 and a complete season. The last time that we faced something like this was actually the opposite. It was someone who was creeping towards 400. And that was Tony Gwynn when the 1994 season ended early. He had worked his way. He'd been hitting 330, 340 most of the year, and over the last month and a half of the season had worked his way up to hitting 394, and was approaching 400 when the season ended. I want to say end of August, beginning of September. So we're approaching a little different territory here. And just a side note, Blackmon got another hit tonight, so he's now hitting 492.
Well, let me give you another.
492 through 17 games. I saw an article about this on MLB.com, and it was definitely very interesting. The guy is 34 years or 34 years old. 34 years old. He's probably not going to play in every game this year, so he's probably going to miss 2 or 3 games of the rest of the season. It's likely that the Rockies will kind of hold him and kind of sit him strategically throughout the rest of the year. He's hitting for a high average. However, going into this game, he had played 8 games in Colorado and 8 games away. So it wasn't like this is a completely inflated number because of the low altitude games in Colorado. So looking at kind of where he's at in terms of his games, he's had 64 at-bats so far this year, and it's likely he would need, so he hits another 168, would put him at 232 at-bats on the season. So hitting 400, he would need 93 hits, or 62 more hits so far on the season. In order to do that, he would need to hit at least 369 for the remainder of the season. So he is a 307 career hitter. So obviously he's having a major breakout this year. I wonder how much maybe the what has to do with a lot of this is the lack of pitching Yeah, because of the pitchers getting shut down and then starting back up, there's a lot more guys that wouldn't necessarily be on an MLB roster now in as starters and as relievers because of everything happening with COVID and them expanding the roster. So I think that it's possible he can do it. The statistics here say there's about a 6% chance. So.
All right, Xavier, what are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely believe that he can do it. He's a career 304 hitter. Listen at these numbers just is throughout Charlie Blackmon's career since 2011. In 2019, he batted 314. In 2018, he batted 291. 2017, 331. 2016, 324. 2015, 287. 2014, 288, 2013, 309, 2012, 283, and in 2011, 255. The 255 is his worst average throughout all of those seasons that I just named. I think people have very short memories when it comes down to certain players. Charlie Blackmon was one of the best players in baseball just 2 seasons ago as the Colorado Rockies were shocking everyone and making the MLB playoffs. No one expected that out of them. Now, it should be noted that he has other great teammates as well, like Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story as well. But I do believe that Charlie Blackmon can keep this up. It's a very limited amount of games that they're playing right now. He's not going to stay as high as he is now, but I do believe that he can finish somewhere between 405 and 410 as far as his batting average.
Well, here's the intangible factor about what both of you guys are saying. I think he can do it, but you're talking about the quality of pitching with these rosters being what they are. So you don't know whether you're going to have taxi squad pitchers or whether you're going to have the actual regular pitchers. So that's a little variable here. You follow me? So, again, it comes down to the quality. But then again, this is COVID-19 and the 2020 year where if anything can be bizarre, it'll be bizarre. I should point out, by the way, an update on that Miami Marlins-Toronto Blue Jays game. The Marlins have scored 3 runs in the top of the 9th, and that game is now tied at 4-4. So, and another update that I should pass along to you guys, the Tampa Bay Lightning 3, the Columbus Blue Jackets 2. It took 5 overtimes to complete that, the 4th longest game ever. How about that? We stay with it, guys. We stay on top of this stuff.
We definitely do, and I have an update that I'd like to provide to you from the NBA. The Portland Trail Blazers and the Dallas Mavericks were in an absolute offensive showdown. There was no defense played in this game. The Portland Trail Blazers went on to win this game 134-131. It did not go into any overtime. And Damian Lillard continued his unreal streak of games that he is having in the NBA bubble right now. In the previous game, he had 51. In this game, he had 61 points on 17 of 32 shooting, 9 of 17 from the three-point line, 18 of 18 from the free throw line. And Scott, Ryan, I'll go back to something I said on the Sports Exchange last week. The Lakers are somewhere deep down inside. They are hoping that Portland somehow does not get that 8th seed because this is not a normal 8th seed NBA team. They had injuries most of the season to a lot of their key players, and they are healthy again now. And Damian Lillard is on a mission. Carmelo Anthony is on a mission. CJ McCollum is a nice player, and Yusuf Nurkic is back healthy. I really believe the Blazers have a legitimate chance of possibly knocking the Lakers out in the first round if they see them.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit more NBA now that you brought that up. Okay, first of all, the Phoenix Suns 130, Philadelphia 76ers 117. Why is that significant? Joel Embiid's out for a little while, and is it Ben Simmons, Xavier McKnight? He'll be done for a while.
Ben Simmons is out for the rest of the season.
So a good win for the Suns. The Philadelphia 76ers will watch their playoff hopes. I don't see them going very far if they stay in. I am surprised that both bubble teams in the National Hockey League, the Edmonton Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs, are done. I thought both teams, didn't have to leave their respective areas, but it didn't make any difference. So that's more about playoff hockey. So with that said, we're going to let Ryan Skolrud give us a little hockey lesson, right, Ryan? And he's going to let everybody know what is a Seattle Kraken.
Well, honestly, this name actually came a little bit. It was a little bit controversial, somewhat, just because there are people that hated the name. There were a lot of people that wanted to go with some sort of fish name like sockeyes or chinook or something like that, either based off of one of the Indian tribes up here because of the Indian contingent up here, or name it after some sort of animal that was native to Seattle. And like I said, the sockeyes was definitely one that was debated about. The issue that came up with that name was the fact that there is a novelist from up here in Seattle who, in her novels, writes about someone who's dating a professional hockey player who plays for the Seattle Sockeyes. And so it's an invented professional hockey team in her books. And because she came up with that name, she owned the copyrights to it, and she wasn't giving them up. So that was a popular name up here, but it ended up not being picked. The name that was picked was the Seattle Kraken. For those of you who don't know what a Kraken is, you may remember Clash of the Titans with Sam Worthington and Liam Neeson, where Liam Neeson playing as Zeus, makes the big, release the Kraken statement. And the Kraken was a mythological creature that has been in both Greek mythology, but mainly in Norse mythology, as an octopus / squid type of animal that would basically swallow ships and take down ships at sea. Another reference in modern culture to the Kraken is in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So the Kraken, a lot of people were, why would we have the Kraken in Seattle if it's based in Norse mythology and in the Atlantic Ocean? Well, it just so happens that Seattle has a very, very large Norwegian and Scandinavian contingent, and so because of that, it made a lot of sense to have a Norwegian / Scandinavian creature, mythological creature, as a name for our hockey team. So it's definitely been a little bit of a roller coaster trying to figure out what this team was going to be named, and it was awesome to see the logo and everything that they've created for the team. Just a side note, kind of a history lesson. The Seattle actually does have a bit of a history in hockey. Seattle was in 1917, I believe was the year. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in that era. Seattle was the first American team to win the Stanley Cup. Before that, it had only been won by Canadian teams. And it wasn't until 7 to 11 years later that the New York Rangers became the first National Hockey League team, American National Hockey League team, to win the Stanley Cup. So there is a bit of a history in Seattle of hockey. For those of you, like you, who are from the Detroit area, who may remember the goalie Chris Osgood, he actually played. I actually got to see him play when he played for the Seattle Thunderbirds minor league hockey team in Seattle back in the early '90s. So, like I said, there's a huge hockey contingent that we're really excited about the NHL coming here.
Well, the name I was hoping for was the Seattle Metropolitans.
So yeah, that was the original team, the Seattle Metropolitans, that won the Stanley Cup back in the early 1900s.
Well, yeah, 1917. The only reason why you didn't see Seattle Metropolitans, I have to tell you, Ryan, as Jerry Bettman didn't want it, number one, and number two, they have a division called the Metropolitan Division, so he frowned upon it. So your owners figured, you know what, we get it, we'll do something else. And for a lot of you other NBA fans that are waiting for the Seattle Supersonics, there's no way that anybody... Was Supersonics ever considered a possibility for an NHL team? I know a lot of people would like it, but they don't know. Yeah, I didn't think so. But it's still...
There's too many people too much tied to the fact that if Seattle ever gets a basketball team again, they will change the name to the Seattle Supersonics.
Yeah, I figured that, but it was just worth throwing out there. But Seattle Kraken, what do you think, Xavier, about the Seattle Kraken?
Well, it's a very interesting name. I actually like the name. To me, it is a hardcore type of name. But for the most part, I'm really excited for the city of Seattle and their fans. From what I can tell, they are a great sports town. I can only judge that mainly based upon the Seattle Seahawks success that they've had for the better part of a decade now. That 12th man is real. That fan base is real. The Mariners haven't given them much to cheer about for the better part of the last 20 years, but when the Mariners were winning, and I've seen the replay of this game myself, Game 5, 1995, the American League Division Series, the Mariners are hosting the Yankees, and that fan base was just absolutely rabid that day, especially when the game-winning run was scored. I mean, it was a sensational moment for the city, a sensational moment for the Major League Baseball as a whole, and I look forward to seeing what the Kraken will bring to Seattle. I believe they have a chance to be a very successful franchise, and Scott, you mentioned the Seattle Supersonics. It is a very big possibility that they could be returning very soon.
Really?
Because Kevin Garnett is interested in becoming a part owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And there are reports out there that he would actually like to move that team to Seattle to reform the Supersonics.
Now, I have not heard that. I thought he was committed to keeping it in Minnesota, but I know Glenn Taylor won't sell it to anybody that's going to leave it out of Minnesota. But I know Garnett's looking to get in ownership. I get that. Unfortunately for the Mariners, they've never been to the World Series at least one time, and yet they had that. They won them. They had that great season where they won an awful lot of games, but it never translated to a World Series appearance at all. But
116 wins in 2001.
Right, and yet you had Lou Piniella, undoubtedly. And you've had some great players that went through. I'll say Alex Rodriguez, Ichiro Suzuki, Ken Griffey Jr., and Lou Piniella. So they have a pretty good history there.
Randy Johnson as well.
So great sports town.
And Felix Hernandez was a great pitcher in his heyday for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, many years ago, I saw the Seattle Supersonics play over the Key Arena. And let's not lose sight of the fact that what's good about Seattle Kraken is they'll have that rivalry with the Vancouver Canucks in the Pacific Northwest. So,
already having that close of a rivalry, just based off of geography is really nice to start out with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've experienced that in the Midwest and Detroit. We have a lot of rivalries, but Pacific Northwest hockey, but Seattle and Vancouver is a natural, and they'll fit in the Western time zone. So I know we've had a chance to cover a lot of ground tonight, and you know what? It's been a lot of fun. When people look over this broadcast, yes, we talked about some football, but you know what? During a time like this where there's a pandemic going on, why not dive into the other sports while we have an opportunity? And I think it also commemorates the idea, Ryan, that I want you to let our listeners know that Skull King is not strictly fantasy football anymore, but there's a series of sports. So, why don't you go ahead and lead off and let everybody know what Skull King Sports really stands for now that you've ventured off into bigger territory?
Well, Skull King Sports, like you said, we started as a fantasy football advice website for our first 5 years. And this last March, we officially retired Skull King Football and became Skull King Sports. So we have gone on to not only having fantasy advice, we also cover NFL teams. We've got team writers. We've moved on to other sports as well. So we have active writers for the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, Formula One, and then on top of writing fantasy football articles, I also do a little bit of coverage on NASCAR and IndyCar. So that's where we're at so far. So,
by the way, an update on the Marlins score: Miami 6, the Toronto Blue Jays 4 in the top of the 6. Of course, you have that weird extra inning rule with the man starting on second, but that's the score we have up to this particular point. So. Any other contact information, Ryan, that you want everybody to know? Just so you know, you're listening to Fantasy Football with Scott and Ryan Skolrud. Xavier McKnight is our special guest. Xavier McKnight is the host with me for the Real and the Rare. But Ryan, continue on. I know you probably have some good contact information as we look forward to not only doing fantasy football, but the probability of having a third person on the program as a rotation. Unless Xavier McKnight wants to come on a lot more, he's always welcome to come on anytime he wants. So go ahead, Ryan. Continue on.
So yeah, you can get a hold of me. I am on LinkedIn, Ryan Skolrud. You can also find me on. You can find us on Twitter. Follow us at Skull King Sports. at Skull King Sports on Twitter, Skull King Sports on Instagram. You can also follow, we have a couple different pages on Facebook. You can follow us at Skull King Sports. We also have an NFL fantasy football page, as well as different discussion groups for multiple sports. So you can find us, if you look up Skull King Sports in your search bar on Facebook, you'll find all of our pages and all of our groups there.
And Skull King Sports, this show, fantasy football with myself, and Ryan Skolrud is also on the South Florida Tribune. We have a drop-out devoted to the show. All right. Anything else you want to add, Ryan?
That's it for me.
All right, Xavier, go ahead. You're up next.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at XTMCKNIGHII. The two I's at the end are both capitalized. You can follow me on Instagram at XMCKNIGH22. You can send me a friend request and a follow request on LinkedIn and Facebook just by typing in Xavier McKnight. And you can listen to me a lot more on this network on my show, The Real and the Rare, that Scott and I do every other Friday. We just had another great broadcast on last Friday about asking parents to pay more, basically pleading for parents actually to pay more attention to their children. You guys can check that out as well as other great content we have here on the WSAN network.
Not only that, you also appear on the Sports Exchange a lot as well. So there you go. So as for us, well, you know what, this broadcast, can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. So I shouldn't repeat if I went a little bit too quick. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So please subscribe to this, and then you'll be able to get updates. In terms of our contact information, you can find us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. Facebook, South Florida Tribune. Instagram, South Florida Tribune. We have a YouTube channel as well, South Florida Tribune. And, of course, our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have all of our media distribution partners, our columnists, and, of course, a broadcast there as well. To reach me by email, you can do so at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And last but not least, you can go ahead and connect with me, Scott Morganroth, here on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to accept your connection request. And we look forward to a lot of interaction. So, guys, it was an awful lot of fun doing this broadcast. We've never had a bad broadcast together, and I know we never will. The one thing we want to make sure that we give our listeners is we're very thorough, give them a lot of facts and information. And I'm glad this broadcast did not take as long as the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Tampa Bay Lightning, because that went into overtime. But at least we made sure we wanted to give everybody their money's worth here. So, any closing thoughts out there, Xavier, what our listeners should be doing?
Yes, I do. I know that we had a lot of fun on this broadcast tonight, but I feel that we should still continue to close this out on a very serious note, to continue to remind everyone that COVID-19 is real and you need to take this seriously. You need to mask up, wear your gloves, don't touch your hands or your face, don't touch your face. Please be vigilant around others. Please stay away from large crowds. Please only leave the house unless you absolutely have to. This thing is still out here. It is still real, and we are still in a fight against it. Do not let your guard up and use your common sense.
There you go. I couldn't have said it any better. Ryan, can you top Xavier's act with that one?
No, I think he's got it.
All right. Well, on behalf of Xavier McKnight, Ryan Skolrud, my name is Scott Morganroth, and you are listening to Fantasy Football with Scott, Ryan Skolrud, and tonight Xavier McKnight. Till the next time, everybody be safe. Good night, everybody.